Good morning to all of you and welcome to this discussion on one of the greatest plays ever written by one of the greatest playwrights that ever existed, William Shakespeare, and the name of the play is The Tragedy of King Lear. Lear, the aging king of Britain, decides to step down from the throne and divide his kingdom evenly among his three daughters. First, however, he puts his daughters through a test, asking each to tell him how much she loves him. Goneril and Regan, Lear's older daughters, give their father flattering answers. But Cordelia, Lear's youngest and favorite daughter, remains silent, saying that she has no words to describe how much she loves her father. Lear flies into a rage and disowns Cordelia. Lear quickly learns that he made a bad decision. Goneril and Regan swiftly begin to undermine the little authority that Lear still holds. Unable to believe that his beloved daughters are betraying him, Lear slowly goes mad. He flees his daughters' houses to wander on a heath during a great thunderstorm, accompanied by his fool and by Kent, a loyal nobleman in disguise. Meanwhile, an elderly nobleman named Gloucester also experiences family problems. His illegitimate son Edmund tricks him into believing that his legitimate son Edgar is trying to kill him. Fleeing the manhunt that his father has set for him, Edgar disguises himself as a crazy beggar and calls himself Poor Tom. Like Lear, he heads out onto the heath. In Dover, a French army lands as part of an invasion led by Cordelia in an effort to save her father. The English troops, led by Edmund, defeat the Cordelia-led French. Lear and Cordelia are captured. In the climactic scene, Edgar duels with and kills Edmund. Goneril poisons Regan out of jealousy over Edmund and then kills herself when her treachery is revealed to Albany. Edmund's betrayal of Cordelia leads to her needless execution in prison, and Lear finally dies out of grief at Cordelia's passing. So I want to begin the discussion by asking a fundamental question, like, what does Shakespeare mean to you? What makes him a contemporary? Why should we read Shakespeare in the 21st century? I would like to begin by asking, why is Shakespeare relevant to you?
When you talk about Shakespeare as a playwright, an author, a poet, I think he would be the numero uno in the world of literature. Because when we talk about the usages that we use, like the name of a rose, what is there in a rose that,
What's in a rose?
what's in the name? And a lot of such usages that we today take for granted have been derived from Shakespeare.
Very good.
I think he's the numero uno in English literature.
Yeah, for example, the phrase to be or not to be, you see. And so many countless quotes we take for granted. You're right, they are actually Shakespearean in origin. You see. So he enriches our language, you see. Part of our language is Shakespearean for any speaker of English. It's only in the 21st century that we have something called global English. But don't forget that even today, we have movies like Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio that are Shakespearean plays, but they are made to suit a 21st century audience. So it is still Shakespeare coming back in the 21st century, but wearing a new disguise, like all great actors. That is the beauty of Shakespeare. And part of his relevance comes from the fact that what Dr. Johnson, the critic, said, that Shakespeare speaks the language of men. Addison spoke the language of poets, but Shakespeare speaks the language of men. In other words, Shakespeare speaks like you and me. His characters are human. They have human weaknesses, they have human strengths, human failures. And that's what makes him so appealing. As you just pointed out, that his appeal has something timeless about it, in the sense that because we can identify ourselves with those characters and with those situations. In every character, even the most minor character in a Shakespeare's play has something to say. Like the gravediggers in Hamlet, for example. They're very minor characters. Or like the fool in King Lear. Very minor character. But you know what? They are the real heroes of his plays. Life is a drama. And the world is a stage. And all men and women are just actors or players, as he calls them.
I think we should read Shakespeare just to see his characters. One can discover a great diversity in his characters. It varies from like the tender lover like Romeo in his play Romeo and Juliet to a diabolical villain like Iago in Othello. So human mind has been a very fascinating field of study. Scientists haven't been able to decipher human mind even now. So Shakespeare, I think he made an attempt to delve deep into the psychology of his characters, how the mind of the character works. Here we can see the villainity between Goneril and her sister, or what drives a person to commit an act, maybe of heroism or maybe of treachery. So just to undertake that psychological study, I think we must read Shakespeare. So Shakespeare is very much relevant even today.
It's true, you're right. He's a great psychologist. In fact, the great psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud said that Shakespeare and the Russian writer Dostoevsky anticipated psychoanalysis. But Shakespeare understood psychoanalysis or modern psychology long before Freud came on the scene. So there are some good actors, there are some bad actors, some not so good actors, some not so bad actors. So goodness and evil are merely aspects or elements of a drama. So if you ask Shakespeare, is King Lear a good man or a bad man? There is no answer. He is just a man in one particular situation. He is just a man who is trapped in his own imagination. He is a dreamer. But then the question we ask ourselves is, who is not a dreamer? Everyone is a dreamer in one way or the other. You see? That is the point Shakespeare makes. Are people just actors? Do you think Shakespeare is right in thinking or in believing that people are just actors? What do you say to that?
We are forced to make compromises. Like we might have to smile at a person whom we don't like. In that way, if you see the situation, all of us are hypocrites and all of us are actors. So I think Shakespeare was right when he said all world is a stage and all men are nothing but actors. They just play their roles, the roles that fate thrust on them. So in that way, I think it is very true.
On the one hand, King Lear, a very great king, a very affectionate father, who loves his daughters, and the love of his daughters is boundless. Just as he is a good king and a generous human being, his love for his daughters is real. It is real to King Lear himself. But like all fathers, King Lear has his doubts. Every parent has some doubts. And what is this nagging doubt at the heart of his role as a father? Do my daughters love me in return? Every parent asks him or herself this fundamental question. Do my children love me? It's a human weakness. Why should you ask that question? You don't love someone by asking them whether they love you in return. Definitely not your own children. We don't expect our parents to be good to us on certain terms. We expect them to love us unconditionally. But here the roles are reversed. It is King Lear as the father who expects this unconditional love from his daughters. So there is something childlike in his behavior. He is an old man. At the same time, there is an element of senility in his character. He is like a child demanding his daughters, tell me how much you love me, tell me how much you love me. He wants to know if he is worthy of their affection. Most fathers would want to know. It's a very human thing. So what makes King Lear different in that sense? Do you think he's like any other father, or is this a normal situation?
King Lear loved Cordelia the most. He wanted to know how much she loved him more than the other daughters. But when he's not getting the expected answer,
Like he's not sure of himself?
he's not sure of himself. It's basically insecurity.
It's basically insecurity. So King Lear is an insecure man, right? He is an insecure man. He's a great king and a great father, but he is also insecure. You see? There is something insecure in his character, which is why he needs language, he needs words. But at the same time, the insecurity is very human. Don't forget, I mean, most normal parents would expect it. Whether they would react like King Lear did by banishing Cordelia, the youngest daughter, because she refuses to tell the father how much she loves him, that's a different question. His reaction is an extreme one. When he banishes Cordelia and denies her her rights in his kingdom, I don't think he is being fair. It's not fair that you use your power over the daughter or over your children merely because they are unable to tell how much they love you. So in that sense, the insecurity really comes out. The insecurity takes a violent turn, very negative, very detrimental. Why does Cordelia behave the way she does? Is it fair for her not to oblige a simple request by her father? The father is only asking her, asking him, asking, a simple question, tell me, do you love me? What's wrong in that question? Can't she answer straight and say, yes, I do love you? Why does she evade or avoid the question? What is the problem? Why do you think she's behaving that way? Don't you think her behavior is rather strange?
I think her not answering the question answers it all. The fact that she doesn't want to put her love in words shows that she really loves her father beyond language, beyond any form of expression. And if she put it in words, probably it would, a lot of people don't really put forward their love in words. They just express it. And the fact that her father was not able to understand that love actually shows a failure on his part rather than hers. I wouldn't say she's proud or arrogant or self-centered. I think her love was innocent and full.
I think Cordelia definitely loved her father better than the other daughters.
For
maybe she felt bad that her father had to ask her if she loved him. What was the need for that question? It was very obvious that she loved him. So it was a doubt on the part of the father. Why should a father doubt his daughter's love?
That is the point Shakespeare makes. You see, that all real love cannot depend on language. Because language is also insecure, like King Lear himself. The very nature of language is limiting. And this is the point that Shakespeare is trying to make. You see, not everything can be put into words. Words have their limitations. You cannot take words too much to heart. So there is always a conflict in Shakespeare between individual choice and the situation that we are born into, as in the case of King Lear himself. Because after all, King Lear is On the one hand, a king of a kingdom, the head of a family, and he is a man in a male-dominated society. Why do I say it's a male-dominated society? For two reasons. As a father, he has the power to banish his daughter when she fails to express her love for him. And that changes a lot of things. I mean, he has the power to destroy her, in other words, merely because she cannot tell him how much she loves him. And Shakespeare reflects his times in that sense. But at the same time, as an individual, he has a choice. He can choose to accept his daughter's response as a normal one. He can say, okay, you were unable to tell your love for me, that's okay, I don't mind. But does he do it? No, he does not. So in that sense, he has failed to make a choice. So on the one hand, there is what we would call destiny, and on the other hand, there is something called choice. And this interplay between destiny and choice runs through the whole of the tragedy of King Lear. A part of it is reproduced in the relationship between the Earl of Gloucester and his bastard son Edmund, who is born before Edgar, the legitimate son. And Edmund is the villain of this play. He is out to destroy his brother Edgar and his father, the Earl of Gloucester, merely because he wants to have his revenge for being this illegitimate child. But at the same time, Shakespeare shows, look, we have to see Edmund as a victim of a situation. You see, that is the greatness of Shakespeare. People are not good or bad. People are just what they are because of their situations. Edmund's anger is real. All his life he has been treated as this illegitimate son. So he cannot forgive the situation. So in Edmund there is this anger. So even there we see a parallel where Gloucester feels betrayed by his sons. In this case, mistakenly Edgar. Because Edmund is the real villain and Edgar is mistaken to be the bad person. It's only later that Gloucester realizes that Edgar is a good man. So we see a mirror reflection of what is happening to King Lear in the case of Gloucester and Edmund. So there is this aspect to Shakespeare's play that we cannot completely express what we really feel. As people who are born into situations, we are constantly looking for words. Babies look for language. I mean, we can see that even mothers have to convince them in some sort of language that they are loved or accepted or wanted. So at the heart of human nature, there is this need for language. Cordelia cannot express. She cannot say how much she loves her father because her love for King Lear transcends language. How do they reflect on this notion that there is something beyond language, that there are certain emotions that cannot be expressed in words? Can you think of any?
There's a film called Achan Veedu. It speaks about a father and his relationship with his daughters. There's a strong bond between them. But there is no need to express that bond in words. Their actions themselves prove that. And with regard to King Lear, I'd like to ask a question that why should a father ask his daughters about their love? Did he really love the daughters?
Priscilla, what do you think?
Our parents expect something from us. My friends expect something from me. Even the people I meet, they also expect something from me. But not always are the expectations realized. So that's where, the tragedy of life comes into play. Sometimes we are able to live up to the expectations that our parents keep on us. And I think it's not a problem with men, it's human to expect.
Very good. So you think it's a human situation. It has nothing to do with father or mother or friend or... So there are these expectations.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there are two situations here. I mean, even we see in the case of Cordelia. One situation is where she can satisfy her father's expectations, which means she still has a share in the kingdom and she's still in her father's good books. Second situation is what she does. So she's choosing to do, right? In the second situation, she's choosing not to merely flatter her father, treat him as a stupid person like Goneril and Regan do. And in that sense, she has to face what comes with that choice, which is terrible. To be abandoned by a parent is a terrible thing for a child. It causes a great crisis. So either way, she's making a choice, right? How does it reflect on her?
Language is a medium to express, but it cannot always express your true emotions and feelings. So I think only by actions and deeds that you can express your true feelings, and that was what Cordelia did. Even after her father not recognizing her true feelings for him, he still empathizes with him, not like Regan and Goneril does. So I think better than language, it's always actions and deeds which can prove a true human being's feelings, rather than going, language, rather than the language that you speak.
Don't forget, in summary, that's what Shakespeare also is trying to say, that at the end of the day, it's your actions that count and not how much you say. Because by the time we come to the end of the play, King Lear becomes aware of the reality, and finally he realizes that it is Cordelia who really loved him and not the others. And that's how the play ends, when one of the characters says, "All friends shall taste the wages of their virtue, and all foes the cup of their deservings." So there is a moral aspect to it, which Shakespeare is trying to say, that we do pay the price for what we do, whether as friends or whether as enemies. When we are enemies, we get what we deserve. When we are friends, we are given the wages of our virtue. So definitely, that's how Shakespeare concludes the play. But still, my question is fundamental, because how can a child be herself? As Sartre says, there is an element of betrayal in all choice.
Flattery is used for hypocrites, whereas you have this convention. It's a Shakespearean convention where the true people who are who mean what they say don't usually flatter. So I think Cordelia falls in that category, and she chooses not to flatter, unreasonably flatter her father, and so I do not think it is betrayal of expectations in that sense of it.
So it's not really betrayal of expectations.
No, I don't know. Because she does live up to her father's expectation, considering the fact that after she was abandoned by him, she still loves him and takes him to her kingdom after she is abandoned.
That is in a deeper sense, she's actually fulfilling his expectations.
And that is what where Meenu had said that, by her deeds she shows him that she loves him more than the other two flatter him and show them by words.
Sir, in the patriarchal society in which we, as well as Cordelia, lived, the father has the property. So King Lear was the owner of the entire kingdom. So he had the power to make a person flourish or to crush her completely. So that was the power that the father figure wielded in that time. So in order to get the power, the other two daughters flattered him, and Cordelia, as Radhika said, was reluctant to do that. She had her own identity and her own respect for her own self, which made her stand independently without any regard for the property or the finer feelings of her father.
What is wrong in what Goneril and Regan do? Because don't forget, after all, if King Lear's expectations are unreasonable, they are doing the right thing. They are flattering the man and asking for his property.
Yeah, at that time they were trying to flatter him so that he will get the property, and they fulfilled his whims. But in the long run, they proved to be quite the opposite of what they professed themselves to be. When Lear went to stay with them, he was ignored and neglected. So it becomes very obvious that they were doing nothing but flattery at the beginning.
What is the relationship between the sisters? I mean, why are they so different from each other? And why are Goneril and Regan against Cordelia? What is their animosity towards Cordelia?
Goneril and Regan, I think, were looking for temporary gains. They flattered King Lear just to get the property, and afterwards, when he gifted them the property, they turned him down. And Cordelia is one person who, even though she does not put her love in words, she has that bond with King Lear inside the heart. She is true, whereas the other two they are not true. So there is that conflict between something that is true and something that is false. This might be a cause of the conflict between the sisters, I feel.
Since King Lear's expectations are not realistic, and since he wields such enormous power to make or break their lives, don't you think Goneril and Regan are justified? After all, they are women and they are victims in a male-dominated society. Don't you think they are right in doing what they have done? What is an alternative for them? If they did the same thing as Cordelia, don't you think King Lear would have destroyed their lives in all ignorance? What do you think?
But sir, soon after the property was divided, we can see that Cordelia was recognized for her true self. She was married to the King of France, who took her in the way she was. And later on, we can see that Goneril and Regan falls in love with the same person, the Edmund, and their lives are destroyed. What Goneril and Regan did to King Lear, they suffer for that. But Cordelia is recognized for what she did.